So Republicans are desperately trying to figure out how they could have blown it in the midterm election. And as usual, they're completely missing the point. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So America sent the Republican Party a loud and clear message in the last midterm election. And the Republicans, including those on Fox News, are doing everything they can to avoid learning the lesson of what actually happened. Check out this video here.
Charlie, let's go ahead and start in Nevada, for example, where we do know that 79% of the votes were early votes, right? We have expanded election season. We give people more time to vote. They can do it in person early. In some places, they're mailing in their ballots, 79%. And now we know the Republicans have lost Nevada as well. And so we're waiting for that runoff in Georgia if Herschel Walker were to win.
Now, isn't this terrible that we're actually making it easier for people to vote? And one thing that you don't hear anything about is the fact that a lot of those people who mailed in their ballots voted Republican. In fact, there was a lot of concern following the election that a lot of the late dropped off ballots in Nevada and Arizona might be enough to push the Republican candidates over the top. And what's more is it's worth noting that the Republican candidate for governor actually won in Nevada. So much for this being a system that is completely rigged against Republicans. So the response of Republicans, again, appears to be, rather than trying to actually understand what it is that's motivating people to vote one way or another, instead to try to complain about who voted and then make it harder for those people to vote. Let's keep watching.
And we'd have a tie, but Vice President Harris, once again, would be the tiebreaker.
Right. And, obviously this is a disaster.
Now note that this is actually before it became clear that Mark Kelly had won in Arizona, meaning that now we already have a tie, and it's the Georgia race to see if the Democrats actually get a 51-vote majority in the Senate. Let's keep watching.
The week after the election, and we're still talking about it. And any kind of...
I love the headline, by the way. Red wave becomes a red ripple. I mean, I hate to be casting some schadenfreude here, but I must admit that I do kind of enjoy watching the Republicans squirm a little bit. Let's keep watching.
Conversation that you have about ballots, and you talk about late early ballots, you probably have a problem if that's what you're talking about. But this notion...
Except for the fact that, again, in both Nevada and Arizona, they actually believe that the late early ballots that they're complaining about now would actually be more Republican than Democratic and would actually help their candidates, not hurt them. Now that it appears that they've lost, all of a sudden they're complaining about them. Let's keep watching.
That ballots that are cast on election day are the problem here. That's not the problem. The problem is that we are still voting, holding elections under this pandemic crisis mode, where instead of election day, you have election week or election weeks, which, of course, not only does it actually invite real problems in terms of the credibility of the election, but then, you have a situation like this where not only do you actually invite real problems with an accurate election, you also have everybody just thinking that the game is rigged and that the thing is fraudulent.
No. The reason that people think the game is rigged and the election is fraudulent is because of the fact that you have the former president of the United States saying that the game is rigged and it was fraudulent, with his claims being amplified by these kinds of talking heads on Fox News. People totally understand that it takes time to count the ballots, and they're willing to wait, even though it can be frustrating at times. They understand if you want a full and accurate count, it's going to take time. And the only reason this became an issue was because of the fact that Donald Trump wanted to declare victory in the 2020 election and was messed up in that effort by Fox News calling Arizona for Joe Biden. A call, by the way, that turned out to be accurate. But again, this just shows. Here they are complaining about making it easier for people to vote, people being able to vote, instead of talking about the fact that, maybe people were mad about our extreme positions on abortion, for example. Or they didn't trust what we would do to Social Security and Medicare if we got control of government. or that we had nominated such extreme candidates who were obsessed with the 2020 election that even if people weren't enthusiastic about the Democrats, they'd sure rather have the Democrats than those nuts. But let's keep watching.
Perception is sometimes more important than reality to some people and in their minds. And we talked about this yesterday. Every vote counts. Every vote matters. Republicans, I think that they were exactly right when we said we need to get a handle on our election systems. We don't play the game. It's one thing to complain about the game. It's another thing that we don't play it at all. We still say vote on election day. We don't fight for those early votes. We don't ballot harvest. We don't play the games that the Democrats play.
Okay. I can't remain silent during this because them claiming that the Republicans don't fight hard enough is just absurd, as Republicans did everything they could to win this election. The fact of the matter is, though, they just had bad candidates, and those candidates represented an extreme philosophy that was unacceptable to most Americans. And for all this talk about, ballot harvesting and these games the Democrats do, the only time that anybody has actually been charged and convicted with ballot harvesting, a case that resulted in an election actually being overturned by Republicans, no less, was in North Carolina in 2016 and 2018, when Leslie McCrae Dowless Jr., a longtime Republican political operative, and 9 other people who were working with him were all convicted of election fraud in their efforts to support the Republican candidate, Mark Harris. And despite the fact that Mark Harris actually won the election on Election Day, and that Republicans control the electoral machinery in North Carolina, the evidence was so egregious that this fraud had occurred that they threw out the election. And a reminder, that was a Republican doing it, not Democrats. Are Democrats aggressive in trying to get out our vote? Absolutely we are, as we should be. But to claim that Republicans don't do everything they can is just absurd. It doesn't fit with the facts, and it's trying to cover over the reality that they keep glossing over, which is that they had bad candidates and they don't represent the American people in their issues. Let's keep watching.
Because we want to be self-righteous, but we keep losing because we're that.
They want to be self-righteous. I just love that. This is from the party with the presidential candidate who they loved, who lied more than 30,000 times while he was in office. Let's keep watching.
Self-righteous, so we're going to have to play the game. We're going to have to do some of what they do.
There are two causes with one effect here. One is the technical issue of how elections are handled. I mean, if you want, the Democrats will pass a Voting Rights Act that will federalize how states elect federal offices, but that's not what Republicans want. So it's hard to complain in one hand about how some states hold their elections, while on the other hand advocating against any kind of federal law that would federalize those elections. So there has to be a little bit of you got to reconcile this a little bit. But if you go back to just strategy and how you win votes.
He's right about that, actually, because of the fact that they can't, on the one hand, complain, we're for states' rights, but then we don't want the states running their elections the way they do. Kind of like how they're being with abortion, isn't it? We're for states' rights. We want the states to be able to decide, but wait, Congress is going to step in and ban abortion nationwide. Let's keep watching.
No matter how they come in, it's hard for me to stomach Rick Scott pointing a finger at Mitch McConnell for the way he elaborated his strategy, which was to talk about how bad Democrats are. When Rick Scott put out a tax plan that no other Republican supported, that the Democrats were able to message saying that because Rick Scott is Republican leadership, it was the Republican tax plan. So, Rick.
Now, he's right about this, actually. But this idea that no other Republican supported it is absurd. All that Rick Scott was doing is he was just saying the quiet part out loud. Was it a tactical and strategic mistake? Probably, because it gave the Democrats something where we could say, hey, look, the Republicans are about cutting Social Security and Medicare, and they want to cut the taxes for the rich, because that's what Rick Scott is proposing. But that doesn't mean that all the Republicans who are running weren't in favor of that. It just means that Rick Scott said the quiet part out loud. And again, it's just a reflection of the fact that Americans do not support the extreme agenda of the right-wing Republicans. Let's keep watching.
Scott stands there and says, well, McConnell didn't have a good plan. Well, he can only say that because he put a plan out there that Democrats used against us. And so this is more about Republicans getting on the same page, or just as much as it is about how Pennsylvania or Nevada or Colorado does their elections.
Yeah.
Wow, boy, I love seeing Republicans complain about how disorganized and in disarray they are. I'm so used to hearing about Democrats. I mean, there's that famous Will Rogers quote that I don't belong to an organized political party, I'm a Democrat. And yet here we are, and it looks like the Democrats are a well-oiled machine compared to these guys. But at least this guy is acknowledging the fact that there's something going on with the Republican Party other than just the way elections are administered. But he's not willing to go so far as to say, oh, you know, our candidates or our agenda were way too extreme for America. That's just too big a leap for them. Let's keep watching.
Well, speaking of Rick Scott, he was on Sunday Morning Futures earlier this morning. Let's take a listen.
We haven't even finished what's happening in Georgia. Here's my focus is we still got to win Georgia. I'm not going to take anything off the table, but my job right now is to do everything I can help Herschel with. I'm going to be there today helping Herschel. So that's what my focus is.
Charlie?
You know, I think that Rick Scott's exactly right about that. You know, it's easy to sit here and say that the Georgia race doesn't matter because it doesn't determine the outcome of Senate leadership, and he's correct about that. But Georgia is still a very, very important race because, especially going forward, that one vote is going to matter after 2 years and after 4 years, I suspect. But Mitch McConnell has a real problem on his hands right now because
I agree, by the way. It is a big race, probably a bigger race than a lot of Republicans are acknowledging because of the fact that that'll put us in a better position in 2 years to hold on to the Senate, where we have a tougher map than we had this year, by the way. Let's keep watching.
And we're already starting to see people trying to circle the wagons in the Senate, trying to protect him. But the bottom line is, you know, Mitch McConnell has been part of leadership for 20 years. He has been the leader for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so many of the problems, whether it is addressing this issue of the way voting is conducted in different states, whether we're talking about candidate selection, which he wants to dump all over, or we're talking about the message that Republicans carry forward, then I'm sorry, that falls to his feet. And, you know, we were talking earlier, if you're a college football coach and you come up with a losing season like this, you're going to pay a hefty price.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm no fan of Mitch McConnell's, as all of you know, but I actually kind of feel sorry for him here. Truth be told, he's been a very effective leader for the Republicans. Frankly, I'd be thrilled if they displaced him in leadership. Maybe they'd put Rick Scott in charge, which would be a boon for the Democrats, frankly. I mean, were it not for Mitch McConnell, we would probably have a progressive majority on the Supreme Court right now. Or at least we wouldn't have the kind of deficit that we've got right now. And Mitch McConnell, frankly, was dealt kind of a tough hand this year. I mean, he had these candidates who were recruited by Donald Trump, who were terrible, extreme candidates, who had to repeatedly show their fealty to Donald Trump by repeating the big lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Something I think it's pretty clear Americans are pretty sick of. So while I am enjoying watching Mitch McConnell flailing around a little bit, I have to say I think it's a little bit unfair. Frankly, the less effective leader of the Republicans is Kevin McCarthy, who only gains the House by virtue of the gerrymandering that Republicans engaged in at the state level. Were it not for that, frankly, we'd be getting ready to swear in Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. At any rate, let's keep watching.
And I don't want to jump right back in, but I'm not taking up for Mitch McConnell. I'm just saying I don't like the posture of some of these Republicans who are basically knives out seizing opportunities. And that's what Rick Scott looks like to me. And I think that's not unity. That's not getting on the same page. And just to go back to Georgia on a 50-50.
I also agree with that, by the way, that there are a lot of Republicans who are knives out seizing opportunities. Probably the classic case of that, of course, would be Ron DeSantis of Florida or Chris Christie of New Jersey, both of whom are positioning themselves as being these alternatives to Donald Trump for the presidency, even though they spent much of their time as his sycophants supporting his agenda until all of a sudden he didn't have a very good election. Let's keep watching.
Versus 51-49. How much of the Democrats' legislative agenda that didn't pass or got passed with a lot of Republican input because of someone like Joe Manchin, how much of that is rubber stamped with?
Ah, yes. Now here we're hearing what the entire Republican philosophy is, which don't let the Democrats do anything. This just shows that this isn't just Mitch McConnell who takes this approach of stopping everything that the Democrats do. This is actually the philosophy that grassroots Republicans want. They don't want government to be able to operate. They don't care if the country is hurt as long as they win. That's all they care about. And that's, again, part of what Americans rejected in the last midterm election. Let's keep watching.
49 Republican senators over the last 2 years.
I just want to pause for a second and read you a tweet from Senator Josh Hawley. He said, "The old party is dead. Time to bury it. Build something new." Tommy.
A lot of Republican voters are feeling that way, but then we have to consider a whole new mess that's probably coming our way if we have a Trump announcement this week. And we're going to talk about that later. But if we're thinking we're divided now between McConnell and Rick Scott and all the rest of it, wait until Donald Trump's name is back in the running officially. I know he's been hinting at it for a long time, but when it's officially there, not only will that impact Georgia, likely, it's going to be whether Democrats hate Donald Trump or Republicans love Donald Trump enough to push Georgia over the line. But there's going to be a lot of issues in the Republican Party that we have 2 years to sort out. We better start today.
Ah, yes. And Donald Trump, of course, did announce. And I think we're already seeing the divisions that it's causing within the Republican Party. Something, again, I'm having a hard time getting upset about. But if you want to see an analysis where I discuss if I think Trump is going to win the nomination, why don't you check out this video over here. It appears the Republicans are going to be in for a tough couple of months. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.